This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Vinnie Stergin. And we're going to be talking about the mindful ukulele method. And very happy to have you on the podcast today. This is actually going to be episode 961 of the Fam Electric Ghost podcast, tracking that on Apple Podcast. And we've got your website up that will be fully clickable, ghost.mindfulukulelemethod.com. And again, that will be fully clickable when we are published. I want to let people know we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You can see up there it says listen on Newsly. So if you use coupon code GHOST today, you can get 1 month free premium subscription on that platform. It's an audio only platform. We'll be on Newsly later today. And I want to thank you again for being on the podcast. And the topic that we're going to get into is like, here it goes. How creativity, learning a new skill will help you to calm your mind and be in the moment, which I think for a lot of people who are creative, we kind of know how that works, but maybe for people who are not, we can get into that discussion. But again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, awesome to be here, Phantom. How was your morning so far?
Yes. Oh, it's good. You know, I'm in the middle of all my, I'm in my bedroom studio, so I've got all my hardware synthesizers behind me all the time. And that's always
good place to be.
My creative moment. I'm a bedroom producer, really, because my sensor is there. So if I wake up in the middle of the night and I got an idea, I just go with it. So that's always been my kind of mindset. I don't want to have to go too far from my instruments. This is kind of the way I am. I see you got something hanging behind yourself as well.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
The creative idea. So maybe you can talk about, I know you're into the ukulele and you have this concept of the mindful ukulele method. Maybe you can talk to people about what that means.
Yeah, cool. So I'm an artist and a producer and also an educator since forever. I actually never did anything else. I grew up in the Austrian mountains in Central Europe. And it's also where Arnold Schwarzenegger is from. Do you like Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah. I remember Terminator, like the first one. And I remember when he was doing Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that. I'm a child of the 70s, so I remember his first things. But
so that's the same country. That's why a lot of Americans can put the finger on the map where Austria is. And I always had music in my life. I grew up doing lots of traditional brass band music. It's like Oompa bands, marching in a band, playing the clarinet. And
oh wow.
Then I ventured out into the world. I lived in the States actually for some time. I lived in Los Angeles, which was a crazy, fun, weird time, but I loved it. And then I came back to Europe, and then I moved to London in the UK. And besides creating music and releasing stuff as a recording artist and touring with bands all over the place, I always had education as a side project. It was, you know that yourself, as a musician, you gotta spread your wings wide and far. and I always enjoyed it. I loved working with people. I loved introducing people to the world of creativity, to the world of music. And at some point, I started to introduce mindfulness also as a part of my teaching methods, where I meditate with my students, or we do lots of breathing exercises. And I found that it made a really big impact on my students, because lots of them, they hadn't engaged with that kind of philosophy before. And mindfulness is ancient. It's been there for thousands of years. And it was just a very simple shift where people just had a lot deeper experience rather than just having instrumental lessons. And then at some point, for people who are more of my adult students who wanted to do music, but they always thought, I'm not good at this, or I've always been told that I can't do that. I started to use the ukulele as a first instrument because it's a very easy instrument to learn. It's very accessible, it's cheap, and by the end of the first lesson you already can play a first chord or even a first song, and it helps a lot with confidence. And combined with the mindfulness, it just opens for a lot of people a way to engage with creativity in a non-judgmental and fun space of curiosity, where you just explore music very innocently. And I've loads of my students, they love it, and they keep on learning other instruments. But that's how it came about. So I was always teaching, then I started to introduce mindfulness, and over the past 20 years I just turn it into something where we do mindfulness exercises and learning how to play the ukulele to begin with, and then some other instruments. And I usually do it through a 12-week course that people do. So it's 12 weeks of lessons, and then some people go on or some people don't go on. So if anyone is interested already, just check out the link that Phantom has posted there, ghost@mindfulukulelemethod.com. There's a little free course. It's a free 4-part series where I introduce the method a bit more. It's with videos and some exercise. And by the end of it, you're going to be able to play Stand Up For Your Rights by Bob Marley, which is a cool song to know.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Because I was just listening to some Culture and Bob Marley yesterday, the band Culture, and then also some Bob Marley. And
yeah, beautiful.
But yeah, I think a lot of people in the hip hop world kind of understand the idea of not playing an instrument, and they were drawn in by things like the 808 and the 909 and the Kai MPCs, because they were like non-standard ways of playing. Like when the kids got into samplers, they were able to say, well, yeah, I'm in this urban apartment, I can't afford to have a guitar or a keyboard or even a wind instrument because it'll make too much noise. And then these tools allowed a lot of people that weren't traditional musicians to get into music. But I like the idea of being a life coach or a mentor and bringing those things in, because I've been interviewing people in that space for like the last year and a half. And people said, well, why is a musician going to interview life coaches and mentors? And I said, well, music is like, the Beatles were the mentors for how many generations of people that weren't just filmmakers, executives, business people, all kinds of people were inspired by the Beatles. And so music, and that's just an example, there's other, I'm inspired by like Sun Ra, and what So I mean, to me, musicians were always like mentors and life coaches, because they
that's a beautiful way of seeing it.
Yeah, I think you saw the how you could thread the needle, because I think a lot of times you can integrate. There's art therapy. A lot of therapists use art therapy because they find that like connecting people to the arts that maybe didn't think they were good enough because they had a limiting belief. Right. And so they don't think, because their parents say, oh, you're never going to be good enough. And then they think at 6 years old, and they keep that with them. And then eventually
you're right.
they have to go to somebody like yourself and say, hey, yeah, can I actually do something? And the ukulele, that's a cool tool, cool instrument to get into, because it's not as complex as the guitar. It doesn't have the 6 strings. It's not as intimidating.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's a really cool idea that you found a way to like integrate that.
And it's like you say, music is this frequency that we all understand on a different level. It's hard to describe somehow in rational terms, and everyone has some kind of musical degree. Even if when we speak, our voice goes up, our voice goes down, we make rests, and we create these cadences within our way of speaking, and everyone does that already. And just making that connection for people, it's a beautiful thing for them to allow themselves to do it, and then enter this whole world that exists there. It's quite a magical place to go, and it's not about becoming the best and most amazing player. It's all about engaging in the arts. And I think no one should not engage in the arts, be it any or music or dance or
Yeah.
painting. It's just a way of inherent expression that we as humans are able to do, and it's just a beautiful way to stop the noise and get to all the answers that you have inside yourself, but it's covered with all the noise from outside, and you can do that on any level.
Yeah. I mean, because definitely, if you think about music, was always part of society, and then people started to say, well, the art music or musicians are artisans or something. But music is, if you check it, like in indigenous and African society, it's part of the whole clan, the whole
Yeah.
the whole
Mhm,
the whole village was into it, right? And so it wasn't
mhm,
just maybe they were experts, but everybody could participate in this idea that like, oh, I got to be Jimmy Page or I got to be Hendrix or I got to be Coltrane. You don't have to be at that level, right? You
yes,
can
exactly. Yeah.
appreciate what
Mhm,
at that level.
mhm,
But the idea of the kind of mindfulness is kind of inherent. Like it's interesting, like Bob Marley, the way he did, reggae and with the
mhm,
whole thing with the Killers was it was very spiritual. It was very much a situation where it wasn't just about him like I'm trying to be a mega star, make all the money. It's like he had this higher purpose, and that's people. When you connect to music, you can realize like I've always been into like authentic kind of independent voices. This whole podcast, I
mhm,
started it to actually talk to musicians that maybe weren't major label musicians that are emerging and independent artists. That's how I started the podcast. And then I
mhm.
expanded it to people who are creative in all different ways. But
Uh-huh.
eventually I thought that independent and emerging artists needed to be treated with the same kind of respect that, like, behind the music on a major A level artist. That you could go and do like an interview with somebody and give them the platform, because
Mhm.
like all art should be appreciated and everybody can be an artist, like you said.
Yeah, that's totally true. And just embracing that, and lots of it, you probably can relate to that as well as an self-employed, independent artist. I mean, there's so many things shoved at your face from the phone. Okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But then sometimes it's really important to remind yourself, okay, why am I doing this? Oh yeah, it's uh, I want this spiritual connection. That's what everything that counts. And as soon as you lose that, I think you're missing out, and it sort of becomes something else which you can't control anymore. But if you always have this, I really try to protect my love for the arts, for music, as a very innocent thing. I always try to be curious and try to explore places that I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm doing, just to keep this spark alive and forget about all the other BS. That's I mean, it's part of the game, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, but
The
I
music
think it's very
business is
important.
very yeah, the music business today is very interesting because you could come out of left field. Like you could be somebody that's on TikTok doing like a
Yeah,
joke music or something that's like not a traditional musician, right? Suddenly gets
yeah,
fire on a reel or fire on a TikTok or fire on
uh-huh,
YouTube. And they can then
uh-huh.
suddenly get out there and everybody's like, oh, how did that get through? And you're like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
because
Mhm,
it's kind of like that, the established gatekeepers they used to exist that would, they and our people, you have to go to Geffen and go to, all the big Warner and CBS and all these
uh-huh.
big. That's the only way you could get in. Like you could be
Yeah.
playing where maybe they find you, like they found Neil Young and Crazy Horse, and and and,
Mhm.
and back in the '70s in California because they were playing a club. But that's not the only way people get found anymore. Because a lot of people they just I feel music because to me it's cathartic. I just
Yeah.
go and I write because and I do a lot of what I call stream of consciousness stuff, where I'll just put my recorder on and then start playing my keyboard. I'll just start playing piano and just put it in, and then go back and listen to the tapes, and then maybe start doing overdubs or whatever. But a lot of what I do is just because I find it's a way for me. It's an art therapy, that's how I use it initially. And then if I go and it expands and if I find an audience with the track or something, that's
Mhm.
fine. But that's not the primary goal. Is I just like to play. It's fun for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
I think some people have gotten, for getting jaded by like, oh, I gotta sell this much product and think of it as a product rather than the
Yeah.
art. And I
I mean,
think,
it's a hard thing, and everyone needs to navigate it through it somehow with their own way of seeing things. But for me, always one of the most important thing is if I feel okay, I'm getting a bit off track. I always try to remind myself about my core values, which is a community. I want to have meaningful work and all these kind of things. And always, if I judge what I'm doing by my core values that I know, I always can adjust again and think, okay, oh yeah, let's keep it a bit easy and try to come back here. I think it's always a good meter if you get lost and try to think, okay, what is really important for me, or is this other noise just someone else's thoughts? But it's
mhm.
very important to reconnect to that every now and again.
But you talk about how the ukulele can affect your mental and being and your health, and I'm like a strong believer. Like I said, like playing my piano is very cathartic to me. Like just
Hmm.
going, like if I've been working, like I do a day job. I'm a software guy. It's very
Yeah.
logical. I'm kind of
Uh-huh.
stuck in the logic side, and I
Uh-huh.
love finishing the day and then going into the piano because then I go to the other side. What
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't and I what I find the way you're a musician, that what some people might not realize is like you can kind of get into a trance when you're in the middle of playing. Like if you're playing a piano or you're playing
yeah.
a
Hmm.
guitar or ukulele, I think you can't really think about other things when you're in the middle of playing. I think a lot of
Hmm.
times, and that helps you kind of like the way meditation helps you. And it's interesting that you combined the idea of kind of meditation and mindfulness with the music, because I think the music in itself, when you start to play an instrument, you get lost in the instrument. You get lost
Yeah,
in how
exactly. Yeah.
that connection,
Hmm.
right? Maybe you can
And
talk
it's
about
all
that.
about aligning your body with your mind, and a very good way of doing that is just to become aware of your senses. So one very basic thing is when we start to concentrate on our breathing. A lot of people have uh, forgotten how to breathe because everyone is just rushing around. And even if
Yeah,
you focus your attention on your breath for to start with 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it's just a moment where you feel your body, you feel your chest expand. And then also when we play an instrument, we use our ears, so the sense of hearing or the sense of touch. We touch fretboard, or we touch some keys, or whatever. And it's through this act and doing it very, very consciously, you are 100% in the moment. Because you have to engage with your senses, and that's the main thing. It's not really a rocket science, and I didn't invent something crazy. I just put one and one together.
yeah,
And uh, and it can be with sports, could be another thing where you could do
yeah,
that
yeah.
because you
You
have to
do the
be
same
in the
thing.
moment. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
just use music because I love music, and it's what I'm good at and what I know. But it's really all about this becoming aware of your body, of your mind, and um, at the same time immersing yourself in the creative act. Uh, and then when you go on to do something else, your mind is fresh. You might be in a vicious circle of thoughts that you can't stop. But as I say, I keep repeating that it's just a good way of stopping the noise for a moment.
yeah,
And
yeah,
especially for
definitely.
people who work a lot, like I have a couple of students who work 70 hours hour days. They are very um, responsible jobs where they have to make tough decisions all day long. And for them, it's even if they don't practice a lot at home, they come once or twice a week and we spend an hour. It's about being together, doing something cool together, and they usually leave with a smile on their face, having forgotten about all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's like band practice. If you think about it, like a lot of people, they have that
Yeah.
day job and then they go and they have like, a bar band and they rehearse.
Hmm.
And they might be working 60 hours, but that time they spend 2 hours with the band rehearsing to play that
Uh-huh.
gig in a bar or something. That, to me, the people say, "Well, that's a lot of work." It's not work. Like what happens is it's fun.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a place
exactly.
to kinda a lot of people don't realize the connection that, musicians have that kind of team sport type of capability once you get into a group, like a
Hmm.
sports. Like if you're on a
Hmm.
soccer team or a football team, baseball team, there's a connection. There's a lot of nonverbal, and verbal cues. There's a lot of being able to work as a team to build that song together or to
Oh
learn
yes,
it
yeah.
together. When you have the teacher mentor thing and people are kind of getting to a certain capability, it's the coach. It's like that coach teaching the team. You're teaching
Hmm.
that group of artists how to learn a song, and then when they
Hmm.
all get it, it's like it's very satisfying once you actually show somebody something they didn't know how to do or didn't
Yeah,
think they
yeah,
were
yeah.
capable
Uh-huh.
of doing.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's beautiful. It reminds me of also first when you were mentioning hip hop artists getting into 808s and stuff in their apartments. For the past 4 years, I was working in a jail in southeast London, teaching music production to young offenders. It was about
Mhm.
songwriting and music production, and I found it so fascinating that I could go into a place. A guy with a strange accent goes in there, and obviously we're coming from very, very different parts of
Different.
society. But instantly, it doesn't matter because we have music that we both love, and it was just so beautiful to feel that
Yeah,
power of music again, and that
it
and
crosses a lot of boundaries.
oh
And
yes,
that's
yeah, uh-huh,
you could see, 'cause I actually, I work with like punk rockers,
uh-huh,
classical musicians, multiple genres. Now I'm kind of experimental, so I'll jump through all kinds of genres. I like
hmm,
country, I like every genre there is pretty much. And people sometimes are limiting, and they say, "Well, I can't talk to this person." But you talk to a punk rocker, you go to electronic musician, and say they were like, "Well, I'm not dealing with synths." That they like typically they were like, "I hate synths." They don't want to deal with
yeah,
the synth.
uh-huh,
But then you
uh-huh,
show them like, "Well, what about Nine Inch Nails?
yeah,
What
yeah, yeah,
about,
uh-huh,
like
uh-huh,
what about, something like Sun?" You show them like, what you can do. You're not just gonna do something that's poppy. I can show them on a Euro rack that I can get noisy and dissonant, and I can do
yeah,
things that
uh-huh,
are, Joy Division or something that's kinda like, well, the New York Dolls. I mean, you can still vibe, and you can channel that punk aesthetic no matter what
mhm,
instrument. And I started on a wind instrument. You can take a wind instrument and make it punk if you want. It's
yeah,
the attitude. It's
mhm, yeah,
and so people don't realize like once you open your mind, you don't have to have these ceilings of what you can do and what you can't do. And as an experimental musician, we always go into what we don't know how to do, right? We always try to push it. We will push the envelope and say, well,
mhm,
why not break the rule? Why not do this? Why can't I integrate like a Johnny Cash aesthetic with a punk aesthetic? Why not? Because
yeah,
I
yeah,
always
yeah,
felt that Johnny Cash was kind of an outlaw thing anyway. So why that kind
yeah.
of it's the same thing to me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very beautiful. Did you read Rick Rubin's book? Oh, sorry, my light just went out. Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love
Yeah,
Rick Rubin because he kinda came in with so many different types of musicians from, like, a Johnny Cash to, like, the Beastie Boys and all those guys, and able to kinda thread the needle of
mhm.
creativity, the way he looks at it, and he didn't even have really, like, the purest music background. He wasn't like some Berkeley kid. He came in there more like feel. I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always
Uh-huh.
I was always like, I think feel is a lot. I mean, if you talk to the blues guys from the Delta blues guys, they can't read sheet music,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah,
can,
yeah. You're right.
and there was
Mhm,
it's always
mhm,
about kind of feel with a
mhm.
lot of,
And
African American musicians.
yeah, and that's the and I think that also applies to anyone, even if you're not a musician. If you allow yourself to go to places that you think, oh, I shouldn't go there. Maybe like just being open to other ideas, or I mean, how our societies are divided, because it's either you stand here or you stand here, but
Yeah.
we're all inherently human. We all want the same thing. We want shelter, we want companionship, we want to be protected. And again, music and art is a way where it's a shared space that doesn't matter what your political opinion is, and it's just a way where we come together as humans and um, get inspired.
Yeah. I mean, breath control is really interesting because I started on a clarinet. I started on flute, woodwinds, and I was in a
Uh-huh.
marching band, and I was in a concert band and a jazz band, and I
Nice.
actually started writing music on my clarinet as a kid. You know, I was like 14,
Uh-huh.
started writing my own pieces, and then I said,
Uh-huh.
realized I was like, oh, I can't really write for the whole band on this clarinet. So I needed a
Mm-hmm.
writing instrument like a guitar or a piano, and I got into that because I wanted to I would be in these bands and I would be writing for the whole band.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I gravitated toward the piano and keyboards because then I could write the bass line, I could write the chord charts, I could write
Mm-hmm.
everything. And I could even get into like the 808s and stuff and start writing the beats. And then I give it to a drummer and I say, "Hey, this is my initial idea, but I know you're a
Mm-hmm.
drummer, so you're gonna
Do
flesh
your
this out
thing.
and they make it better because I know
Yeah, yeah,
you know percussion. So here's a general idea,
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
either like it's good or it's not, and you take it. And I would even the bass lines. I give a bass line to a bass player, and they're like, "Well, yeah, I know you're gonna make that better than what I wrote, but here's the
Yeah,
general
yeah.
idea."
Uh-huh.
And I was
Mm-hmm.
not like into like just controlling everything. I just ended up being the guy that would come up with the ideas and then have the rest of the band kind of figure
Mm-hmm.
out like, yeah, you can take that and own it. Take it and own
Yeah,
it
yeah.
and turn it into something better.
Uh-huh.
And I
Mm-hmm.
always felt that kind of collaboration. And then later, I actually got some of the guys to actually start writing because I said, they asked me, like, well, how are you doing this? I said, well, I just do it. Don't think you can't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Just go
Uh-huh.
and try it. And there
Mm-hmm.
were guys, they'd say, well, I'm not, they'd, some of the guys I work with, they rather have me give them the initial line than try to come up with it. And then other ones started saying, yeah, why not? Why can't I do that? So yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, like even musicians, they had certain like limiting beliefs about what they
Yeah,
could
yeah,
do and
yeah.
what.
Uh-huh. But it's always where you have you're always a student and a mentor. Uh, so I really strongly believe in that. So even if I work with students, not even and any student I work with, I learn something, and it might come from some place that I didn't even know it existed. Like perspectives, sharing perspectives. The more perspectives you have, the bigger your universe gets, and uh, that's kind of a good aim for me, at least.
Well, I think mindfulness, like you're saying, or one of your things you're talking about, it creates clarity because you were talking
Hmm.
about noise, right? And it's
Yeah, yeah.
interesting because I'm a synthesis, but also I'm a sound designer. So I have
Hmm.
oscillators, and I like to take white noise and pink noise and blue noise and integrate it with discordance into my waveform development. So sometimes people
Hmm.
always think when you make tones that everything's like beautiful. But a lot of times the music,
Hmm.
sometimes the dissonance and the noise and the stuff that's a little off key is actually part of the whole like sound painting. Like not
Yeah,
everything is
yeah.
always harmonious. Sometimes those discordant distortions and things, weird harmonics, those things are actually part of the thing. And maybe people will try to clean it up too much. But I've always been this person that's like, well, why not allow those things to be and also have space, not
Hmm.
layer something so much that there isn't space between the notes, that there aren't silences, right? Even when
Hmm.
people talk, some people are afraid of the silence, right? They're
Yeah, yeah,
afraid
yeah. Yeah, you're right.
to,
Yeah. Hmm.
and then music is the same thing. Sometimes you need some space where there's nothing
Yeah.
going on just to
Hmm.
kind of leave it a little bit, more, for the imagination.
Yeah, and it makes the impact if something harmonious then comes back in even greater. Or it's like also when when I'm mixing tunes, I always have to remind myself to rather, okay, I want something to be more present. No, it's not about making everything louder. It's more about taking away stuff so
Mm.
that there is space to breathe.
Yeah, if you think about one of the famous examples is like Prince when Doves Cry, there was a bass line on that track, and he actually
Really?
took it
Okay.
out.
Hmm.
Yeah, he took it
Uh-huh.
out. I'm a purple head, so I know have all his stuff. But yeah, there's a bass line version, there's a bunch of and there's a couple of versions where there's a lot of other instruments on that track. And the one
Uh-huh.
thing I found about Prince that was very interesting is sometimes he would have these tracks that have all these layers. But then when he ended up putting it out, it sounded more like a demo because he took a lot of the layers out. And that was, I think, his kind of magic as a songwriter is he realized that sometimes less is more, and he would take the stuff out. And then it
Yeah,
was
yeah, that's
interesting
a
that
very basic thing. Yeah.
his business people at the Warner Brothers they were like, "Oh, that's a demo. You can't put it out." They really didn't want Dove's Cry going out the way it did. They said, "Put the bass line back in." He said, "No." Same thing with Kiss. That song had a lot of layers, and he took them out. And they argued with him saying it doesn't sound like it's ready for prime time, and he said no, that's what it is. And I think that sometimes is the guts to actually know that what you've got is not standard, right? It doesn't have a bass line or it doesn't have the percussion that normally people think it should have. There's a lot of people who will try to make you fit into a like a pattern and say that's the way it has to be. And you need the only way to kind of express yourself with individuality is to realize there's not always you don't always have to clone somebody else. You can be yourself, and maybe that's
Hmm.
very different. But you
Yeah,
should
I love
allow
that
it to
story.
be.
Hmm.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should allow it
that's
to
that's a
be.
great story. I need to check out those tunes with the bass line and without the bass line. I mean, without the bass line, I know it. Interesting. I like that. I learned something new, Phantom.
Yeah, I think the clarity of playing an instrument like a ukulele, like you said, it brings the noise, takes the noise out. If you had a day, right, and you're doing a 9 to 5, let's say you're a customer service person, people have been yelling at you all day because you're getting
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
but
yeah.
complaints for like 40
Hmm.
hours. People just
Hmm.
complain, saying like you got this company's got the worst service ever. You got to hear that, and that's your job.
Hmm.
You got to hear that, and
Hmm.
then you're like, wow, how do I dump all this negativity out? And if you go, going for a run, that could do it. Going for a walk, going and doing
Hmm.
crochet or being a musician. Like if you
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
and even
Hmm.
if you're an amateur musician, you just jump on your guitar, put your headphones on or something, or jump on your bass or jump on your clarinet or whatever you're doing. Even these kids today, they jump on the 808 or the sampler or their Akai MPC and they
Uh-huh.
go into their
Uh-huh.
DAW and they start doing stuff. That in itself actually starts to wipe out that noise, in my opinion. I think maybe you can talk about how you feel it happens, but I think once you get into that creative space of that kind of
Hmm.
stream of consciousness in the moment of
Hmm.
of the artistic development, all that negativity from the 40 hours starts
Hmm.
to, you don't think about it as much. It starts to go away.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, it's like I said, because you become aware of your body, you become aware um, of all your senses. I mean, it boils back to that again. I think there's not a lot more a better explanation. It's just becoming aware of your senses and also doing it together with someone is about
Mhm,
being in together. I mean, nowadays since the pandemic, I do it online quite a lot with people from all over the place.
mhm,
Just opened up because I have a local business as well. But once I started doing some online lesson, I saw, okay, this works as well because someone takes a dedicated time each week and we meet up. Uh, and it's about making this decision to go to a place where you disconnect, your phone is away, you're just creating, engaging with the senses, and it just brings you to this place where you're 100% in the moment, and it
yeah,
also
yeah, I'm
fostering this. I think it's also about fostering curiosity again, just going to a place where you don't know what you do and where you
Yeah.
don't need to think, oh, I might do something wrong. And if you have an environment that's very positive and non-judgmental, it's just a good place to go, because you're reaching out, you're looking above the wall and see
Yeah.
a place that you don't know.
It's interesting. I saw this kind of class, like a master class with Victor Wooten, the famous bass player, and
Uh-huh.
he was showing people that, and he could show, he was, I'm going to show you how I think there are no wrong notes, right? Because people get obsessed with like hitting the wrong note, right? When they first start playing it. So he went and did this exercise where he started crossing multiple scales on his bass and doing these patterns. And he said it's really the pattern that matters, right? I can hit these
Mhm.
so-called wrong notes, but I don't think they're wrong notes. And he showed how you could kind of salvage, and a lot of jazz musicians or fusion musicians are able to do this because they
Mhm.
don't get caught up in trying to be perfect, like maybe like a classical musician sheet reading and actually hitting the wrong note and say, "Oh, I got to start again." Where the
Yeah.
fusion
Uh-huh.
musician or the jazz musician, improvisational musician can cross multiple scales, doing different pattern, and it kind of salvage what could have been thought of as an error, but it's not
Yeah.
really an error
Uh-huh.
because they kind of go with it. And Miles Davis was into this, where, like, if somebody did a wrong note, one time Herbie Hancock did a wrong note in the when he was playing with Miles, and Miles
Mhm.
actually adjusted to the note that Herbie played. He actually changed what he was playing, and then
Yeah.
Herbie
Uh-huh.
was like saying, "Oh, I really messed up," and then Miles said, "No, you gave me a new idea," and actually he went with it and actually changed the song and actually started
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it in that way. And
Uh-huh.
he said, he said you shouldn't be apologizing because, like, in our form, that's how we progress. That's how we went from bebop to fusion. Because he decided that he would go into other things, right? That he would
Yeah.
break the
Uh-huh.
rules. And if you just stay doing the same thing all the time, and not being, challenging yourself, that in the moment is where all that creativity happens, where you actually go and explore and you go beyond what maybe you think you're capable of. You
Mhm.
push it, and I think
Yeah.
he shouldn't be scared. And some people won't even pick up that instrument because they're fearful of hitting that wrong note without
Yeah.
realizing
Yeah.
you
You're
could hit
right.
that note and then take it somewhere, right? You don't have to like
Uh-huh.
try to just
Uh-huh.
clone the sheet. You can actually
Yeah. Yeah.
evolve the
Uh-huh.
sheet.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Very true. It also brings me back to my prison work. It was so much about fostering soft skills like communication, uh, adaptability, and that's like becoming adaptable. Okay, if things change, you got to adapt. And I guess that's also that Miles Davis story is a nice example of that. How you quickly need to adapt, and just the show keeps running rather than trying. Okay, there's only one way, because there are many ways, and you always got to be open to explore different places.
Yeah, I think it helps you, at decision making. Because a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of times,
exactly. Yeah.
I'm a designer. Like, it's a very creative thing, but I design software. So we get these plans
Uh-huh.
that come from our management, and the plans for management are very logical and based on. But then we find things. We have these like happy accidents where we're doing
Hmm.
something and then we find something new. It's not on a plan. We got to go to the manager and say, "Hey, we just found something that saves tons of time, or it saves
Uh-huh.
processing power, or it's going to do
Uh-huh.
this, but we got to take a little bit more time to develop it, and we got to pitch it and say, hey, is your deadline more important than the fact that we found something that can make the company money, or it could put us into another market, and it's not on your plan,
Uh-huh.
but maybe you should make it on your plan." So there are
Uh-huh.
some managers that would say no, because we have this deadline, we got to do this. And there's other managers are more evolved that would be like, oh, these creative people just found this thing, and if I put the kibosh on it, actually that's not doing the whole organization a disservice.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're
Yeah,
starting to get more
interesting.
people that are getting into this mindset that are more
Hmm.
creative and less, being dictated by the deadline, which is very
Yeah.
limiting. It's like
Yeah,
a
and
limiting belief. Like
Yeah,
if you get
exactly.
into
Yeah.
an office like that, you actually drive people away. The creative people start walking away because they're like, this guy never gets it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's because it's not a linear process. It's always what's the opposite of linear? I don't know the English word for that. Like it's more creativity is very messy, and
Yeah,
you
it's not
just
always
don't know very end.
sequential. It's non-sequential. You know,
Yeah,
it's
non-sequential.
kind
Yeah,
of like
exactly. Uh-huh.
yeah. I mean, Brian Eno had this habit. He's a really awesome producer, but he used to sometimes go on a chalkboard when he's working with Bowie,
Mhm.
like on Low and
Uh-huh.
Heroes, and he would go and just put random notes with a bunch of studio musicians, just put them up on the chalkboard, and tell these
Uh-huh.
like professional musicians like play these notes. And he said, well, that doesn't even work. Right. The musician, studio musician go and say that doesn't even work on a scale. That's wrong. He said, no,
Mhm.
just do it. Because he was into this kind of dissonance. He was really getting into an idea of like dissonance and discordance. And he would
Mhm.
purposely go and mix scales and do stuff that was very discordant.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the artist would look at it and say, no, that's not right. Right. And then they would go and do it. And then they'd be Bowie and you know, Brian Eno would be like, look, see, like, even though this is not what you would normally do, it fits
Mhm.
what we're doing for this project because we're trying to do this very experimental kind of noise Berlin thing that they were doing in
Mhm.
the mid 70s.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
wasn't really a roadmap to that other than maybe like Lou Reed in the Velvets doing like white noise, white heat. But the idea that you could bring that noise and the discords and stuff
Mhm.
that would be off key
Yeah.
and actually
Uh-huh.
do that in a pop song was
Uh-huh.
not something
Uh-huh.
that people said you should do.
Yeah.
But they did it.
You're a very knowledgeable man, Phantom. Like it. Great stories.
But yeah, I think a lot of people like that's the limiting belief kind of idea. Like you get a guy like an Eno, it's like, why not do that?
Mhm.
You know, why
Mhm.
not explore something that's you're breaking the rules? Yeah, why not break the rule? Because if it fits like Bowie's lyrics, it fits the
Yeah,
mindset. I
yeah.
think Eno was
Mhm.
looking at what
Mhm.
Bowie was writing lyrically.
Mhm.
He said, I need something
Mhm.
that goes with this. And it's not
Mhm.
gonna be standard. It has to be something else because Bowie
Yeah.
was in this other place with the way he was
Mhm.
doing with his content, so you needed somebody to kinda step up. You know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. True. Very true.
But, when you start to work with people, in terms of, like, their confidence building, do you have, like, confidence building exercises for people that come in and you can tell right away they're very hesitant? Yeah, what do you do
Uh,
with, like,
uh-huh.
a person like that, you know?
Uh-huh. Very often, like one of my main things with more adult students, kids are sometimes a bit, not sometimes, most of the time, kids are they just go in and just try it out. But as we get older, we lose this sense of curiosity, and always we think, oh, I can't do that. And so it's actually quite a lot that people are not very confident, and they really fear, okay, constantly apologize. So one of my first things I always say is, okay, when we meet together, you're not allowed to say sorry. So we're gonna cross this word off in terms of musical thing. Obviously, if they break something, they should say sorry, but not if they play a wrong note or whatever. And then already, I'm trying to create a very, very welcoming atmosphere. And some exercises I do is I play a couple chords, and I want to I tell people to make up some improvisation exercises. We use one string.
Mhm.
I play a chord progression, and their task is to play some kind of melody. And if they're hesitant, okay, I don't know what, we just use the open string and you make a rhythm. So starting from the very basics, and as they progress, we use some more notes. And even if they say, okay, I think this sounds wrong, no, I tell them, okay, let's just stay with that and just listen to it. And if you find another, move your finger slowly and find a note that works, and then just keep repeating that note. And it's very playful, and through an exercise like that, people start to get more confident and think, okay,
Yeah.
let's try that out. But it's all about creating a welcoming atmosphere and having a nice, fun vibe going. It shouldn't be serious. It shouldn't be,
Yeah.
okay, we got to be at this point in 2 weeks, and if you're not, you're out. It's all about just
Yeah. It's kind of
creating,
like
and
you can't you can't be like the alpha male in a fitness coaching thing that's trying to get you the six pack abs, and they're like, if you
yeah,
don't
exactly.
do the diet exactly right, if you don't do these push-ups exactly right, you got to go back and start again, right? And it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
different type of coach that's into this kind of all or nothing thing. There's some people that's their whole thing is they just this all or nothing. You gotta do it. You gotta start all over again. Where like you
yeah,
seem to
yeah,
be like in my mindset is like I like to go and do song creation sessions where I purposely go live on Facebook. Like, I'm gonna do this
yeah,
later
nice.
today, and I just
Uh-huh.
go for like a half hour, an hour, and do a jam session on live, and I record it onto my multi tracks. And I don't even I maybe have an idea what I'm gonna do, but sometimes I go
Uh-huh.
into it, I don't even know what I'm gonna do. I just go and just play.
Yeah, nice.
And
Yeah.
people say,
Yeah,
"Well,
that's
isn't that
it.
dangerous? Isn't that" like, why not? Like, you force yourself to not keep on starting and stopping. The starting and stopping to me, that's like, "Oh, I hate it when I'm in a band and they gotta make me start and stop instead of kinda going with it." I've always kinda told them,
Yeah.
let's just go with it
Uh-huh.
and just
Uh-huh.
roll around, right? Which means, like, if we didn't get it right on the first pass, we don't stop. We do the whole song
Yeah.
and then we run back around and we let
Yeah,
it
yeah. Uh-huh.
evolve. And sometimes we
Mhm.
change the song. Because the people we got say, "This is what this guy is more naturally wants to do with the bass line," or the drummer wants to do this. Instead of force them to do it, we let it evolve to where they're comfortable and it actually becomes something else. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah. And
that's a different way of thinking, you know?
yeah, I totally subscribe to that. And it's just trusting in the process. But some people they want, like you say, they want it quite clear. And I always say, okay, I'm your wrong guy. Probably you should look for someone else if you
I
need
can
like
work
a,
in my group.
a
It's
yeah.
like I gotta
I
know
mean,
where I am. It's like I made myself, it's like I don't wanna be in the note for note guys, they're gonna play Hotel California exactly note for note. Like,
yeah.
why would they do that since the Eagles already wrote that and they already did that? Why would I wanna do that again? Because Joe
Yeah, yeah.
Walsh and those guys did it the best way they could, and I'm like, "I don't need to do it that way." It's kinda like the way Stevie Ray Vaughan approached Voodoo Child from Hendrix.
Uh-huh.
His
Mhm.
style, people would say, "Oh, it sounds the same," and no, it doesn't. If you actually listen to it, his
Mhm.
approach is a Texas blues man's approach versus this cosmic funk psychedelic approach. And
Uh-huh.
Hendrix's
Uh-huh.
version, some people would say, well, it's like kind of sloppy. Technically, maybe it is, but it's coming
Uh-huh.
from this different mindset. It's this
Ye
psychedelic, very fusion jazz thing where
Uh-huh.
Stevie's is more precise and
Yeah, yeah.
its
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
drums are a lot tighter than Mitch
Mhm.
Mitchell's drums are not as tight. They're actually kind of
Mhm.
looser. It's more
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
very
jazz
floppy.
fusion.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like they're not exactly the same at all, and they can exist, and you can like either one or both. I like both, but it's a different vision. It's not a note for note cover.
Mhm.
And I think that's where
Yeah,
people
very
make the
true.
mistake. You don't have to be note for note. You can put your
Mhm.
heart into it or your personality into it. And Stevie put his
Mhm.
personality into it. It's not
Mhm.
the same as
Yeah, yeah, true.
and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that there's some
Yeah.
people would say, well, he got to hit it note for note exactly what Hendrix did. I'm like, what? You know, that Hendrix did it already.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 you're right.
But yeah, it's been great talking to you. I know you said you had an appointment, but we want to let people know again, we got that
Uh-huh.
website, ghost.mindfulukulele.com, and maybe you can
Yeah.
tell people again what they can find there.
Yeah, if you're intrigued by what I said, just head there and you can download a free 4-part mini course where I just get into the method a bit more, but it's very practical from the very beginning. The only thing you need is a ukulele, some time, and an open mind. And if you have any questions or if you're interested in maybe doing my 12-week program, just write me an email. You find all the information on there. And it would be nice to meet some of you.
Yeah, it'd be cool. That's awesome. Like that will be fully clickable again when we're published. If you go to the
Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch and all the other places, we're gonna be almost all the major platforms like Spotify and Apple and iHeartRadio. So that
Yeah,
becomes
nice.
clickable and you can just click right through. And we will
Uh-huh.
give a landing page to your audience and they can figure out where they want to listen or watch. But thank you
Awesome.
again for being on the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. It's been great talking to you. I very much love talking to musicians. We started the podcast that way. So thank you
Mhm.
for being on the program.
Yeah,
Have
thanks,
a
Phantom.
great rest
Appreciate
of
it as well.
the night.